Okay, we've got just a couple of more examples I want to do with you for solving a quadratic using the quadratic formula. So again, that quadratic formula, x is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. Okay, that's what we're going to be using here. So first step, we make sure that everything is already in standard form and set equal to 0. Second step is we're going to find that a, b, and c. So a is going to be 1 here, b is going to be 4, and c is 1. And then we're just going to plug in those values. So x is equal to negative, b is 4, plus or minus the square root of b, 4 squared, minus 4 times a, which is 1, and c, which is 1, divided by 2, multiplied by a, which is 1. Okay. And we're going to start simplifying this. So we have a negative 4 here, plus or minus 4 squared, which is 16. Negative 4 times 1 is negative 4, and divide that by 2 times 1, which is 2. And then we end up with negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 12 divided by 2. Okay, so here we come up here because we're out of room, and we are going to look for the square root of 12. But the problem is that the square root of 12 is not a square. It's not a perfect square. So I'm not going to have just a general number, and I don't want a whole number, and I don't want to use a decimal because it's not a repeating decimal. It's not a fraction. It's an irrational number. The square root of 12 is, and so I can't have a precise answer if I use just a rounded decimal. So I need to make this as precise and simplified as I can. So here's what happens when we do that. So just a little side note here, the square root of 12, okay, the factors of 12 are 4 and 3 are two factors of 12, and 4 is a square. So what I'm going to do, this is the equivalent of square root of 4 times the square root of 3. I'm going to take that square root of 4, which is 2, and I'm going to keep it multiplied by the square root of 3. And that's the simplified way to write the square root of 12, okay? And I'm just letting you see that because you may see that on a test in the future. You'll definitely see it when you get to Algebra 2, and so I just want you to be aware of that. So here's what I did. I took that square root of 12, I factored 12 into 4 and 3. The square root of 4 multiplied by the square root of 3 is still equal. All of these things are still the same. I'm just breaking them apart in different ways. And then I took the square root of 4, which is 2, and it's still multiplied by the square root of 3. Okay, so if I were to plug in this into the calculator, 2 times the square root of 3, and I plugged in the square root of 12, I would have the exact same answer. So I'm just rewriting it in a different form that's more simplified and more precise. So I'm going to take that, and that's what I'm going to use. So x is equal to negative 4 plus or minus 2 times the square root of 3 divided by 2. And then that is what I'm actually going to simplify, okay? And so I end up with negative 4 plus or minus 2 times the square root of 3 divided by 2, and x is equal to, we're just using plus here, and negative 4 minus 2 times the square root of 3 divided by 2, okay? So this can actually be simplified a little bit further. So because this negative 4 and 2 can be simplified, and the 2 and the 2 can be simplified, I can actually simplify this further. So I can do negative 4 divided by 2, which is negative 2, and then I can do 2 divided by 2, which is 1. So I can have 1 times the square root of 3. So that's part of my answer. And then over here, I can do the same thing. Negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2. Negative 2 divided by 2 is negative 1 multiplied by the square root of 3. And again, I can take out that 1 because it's not necessary to write it in there, okay? So what I end up with is negative 2 plus the square root of 3 and negative 2 minus the square root of 3. So simplified, I can write my answer as negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 3. Okay, so I know that was a lot of information in one, and if you got to this point, okay, you would still have the correct answer. This, however, is the most simplified way to answer this, okay? So I just wanted you to see examples of what this looked like. If you were to type all of this into calculator and all of this into the calculator, you would get the exact same answers. So even if you got this answer, you could look at, if you had answer choices to choose from, you could kind of use those to see what the final answer would be. So just wanted you to see that example, and we'll do a couple more in the last video.